Welcome to Two Wheels, perhaps the greatest motorcycling show on the planet, where this week we've flown in on our private plane to this glamorous location for a fine day's playing with a bunch of Supermotos. This week on the show we'll be getting stylish and sideways, or at least the pros will, when we check out Supermoto. Fran will be looking at off-road gear for all the body armour, helmets, boots and gloves you could need to stay safe on the dirt. And the head-to-head is a showdown between Pan-European and FJR 1300. Supermoto has been around for years, although it's never really cracked the big time here in the UK, despite the bike press periodically declaring it as the next big thing. There have always been a few nutters up and down the country who have insisted on slapping road wheels and tyres onto their enduro or motocross bikes before happily wheeling off into the sunset. But these have generally been fairly isolated incidents and they've never caused a widespread movement. But although us Brits have been somewhat hesitant in embracing Supermotos, our continental cousins have been lapping them up for donkey's years. The French in particular can't get enough of them and have spawned countless racing heroes in the discipline, some of whom have gone on to even bigger and better things. Most notably Jean-Michel Bayle, who, despite having a girl's middle name, rode GPs for Yamaha not so long ago. And Stefan Chambon, who's currently storming all over the shop once again in World Supersport for Suzuki this year. Supermoto racing is the illegitimate love child of road racing and motocross, where motocross bikes specced up with road wheels, suspension and running gear charge around courses that are half dirt and half tarmac. So 1 minute riders are broad sliding through berms and leaping tabletops, while the next they're siding through knee-down hairpins and charging down smooth straights. The most distinctive part about Supermoto racing is the seemingly impossible way the top boys back their bikes into corners. In defiance of pretty much all the laws of physics governing staying on a moving motorcycle, the accepted form for Supermoto corner entry is with the back wheel howling, bars on full opposite lock and the bike heading towards the apex sideways. Oh, and if you're really good, you do this with both feet still on the pegs. None of that sissy leg out motocross stuff for the legends, thank you very much. I'd like to say I know much more about Supermoto, but I must come clean and say I don't. I've never seen a race in the flesh, and bar the odd squirt on a couple of road-going specials, I've had no further involvement with the bikes either. Until today, that is, however, because we're going to be joined later by the factory Yamaha Supermoto team, who are going to give us chapter and verse on this manic aspect of bike sport. Not only will the team be explaining the finer points of Supermoto to us, they'll also be teaching me the basics of Supermoto riding. And then, when they finish laughing, we'll be demonstrating how it's really done. And now here's Fran with all you could ever want to know about off-road gear.
So you've been listening intently to Waz's words about motocross and Supermoto, and now you're thinking you'd quite like to have a go. But before you start flinging yourself over those crazy jumps and bouncing over the bunny hops, you're going to need to find the right protection. But the choice is huge and overwhelming, so what do you go for? Well, fear not, because the Two Wheels team is here to guide you across that oh-so-busy road of speeding brands and logos. And to stop any confusion, we're going to start with the top and work our way down. And as off-roading is a specialist subject, we've enlisted the help of David, our resident expert here at Powersport Bikes. So David, we're going to start with the head.
We are indeed.
Okay, talk me through the helmets.
3 helmets. We have a budget entry-level helmet, the CMS, retailing at $79.99.
Right.
Moving on to the semi-professional laser at $149.99.
Right.
And moving on to the AXO, the professional's choice, at $199.99.
Right. So there's a bit of a leap. I mean, what's the difference then between the 3 of them?
Okay, features and benefits. This is very much an entry-level helmet with basic features. A lot of the pro riders use the laser. It has a little bit more of features. It has the air vents at the back, adjustable, and as you get on to the professional's choice, the AXO, it's very nice and light.
Oh wow, that is nice, isn't it? So is that what you're paying for then?
You're paying for the build quality and the construction of the helmet, certainly.
Right. So if I was to start then, the CMS is a perfectly good quality item, isn't it?
It has. You can go on the track with it. Every helmet that we sell has got the ACU Gold Star, which means you can go racing.
Brilliant.
Okay.
So this bit here is just a little vent so you can breathe, basically.
That's the chin guard. Yes. The difference between the off-road helmets and the road helmets normally have a visor. The off-road helmet has a cutout for the goggles.
For the goggles.
Okay.
Well, we've got to leave it there for now because Woz is getting a bit jealous that I'm getting all the attention. But we'll be back in part 2 with gloves and boots. See you then.
I reckon the best place to start with this motley crew has to be at the top. So we're here with Steve Woodhouse, team manager.
Hello, Warren.
All right. How did you get involved in Supermoto racing?
I started myself a couple of years ago, racing the Nora Series, which is a British National Championship.
Right.
A few too many injuries, got in the way of work. So knocked the racing on the head, but got involved with one of the riders, sort of managing him and trying to promote the team.
And from there you're now managing the UK factory Yamaha team?
Yes, that's correct. I love building the bikes, developing something like the WR we've got here into a race-winning bike.
And what championships is the team going to be running in this year?
This year we're doing the Sideways Promotions, which is the British National Championship, which is 5 meetings. We've just done 2 on the Isle of Man. We've got 2 at the NAS Games and 1 at Three Sisters in August. This one's been heavily modified for Jay to run in the British Championship with. It's running full factory works O-lins, with AP brakes, a rear O-lin shock. We've done heavy modifications to the engine just to make the thing rev and try and get some more power out of it.
Brilliant. But with Supermoto, it's not just the bikes that are a bit of a road and dirt mix-up, because the kit you'll want for competition is a bit of a hodgepodge too. First of all, you're going to want yourself some race leathers, but with no knee sliders. And then you're going to want to top this off with motocross boots, gloves, helmet and goggles. Now this doesn't entirely make sense to me, so we've got Jay Smith here, one of the factory Yamaha riders, who's going to tell us a little bit about it. Why do you wear a mix-up a kit like this, Jay?
Well, we use the leathers because we obviously use going on the tarmac, and we use the off-road boots because of the protection, because we go onto the off-road with the jumps, the bumps and all that.
Is that for your ankles?
The ankle supports. And we use the off-road crash helmets and gloves with the goggles because we get a lot of dirt thrown in our face and stuff like that. We need to clear it off as soon as possible. That's really basically it, really.
Actually, it sounds like it makes a little bit of sense. So I guess I'd better get mine on and we'll get to it. But enough of all the bikes and the kit already, because the maddest bit about Supermoto has to be the riding. And despite seriously fearing for my collarbones, having seen experienced road test colleagues snapping like twigs within minutes of approaching a live Supermoto, I was gagging to give it a go. Will you look at what Jay is doing here? He's explained the theory to me and I think I understand it. What's happening is he's using the front brake as he comes into the corner, unweights the back end, and then as he's downshifting, the engine braking starts to get that back tyre braking away. He may use a little bit of back brake to help get it out a bit further, but not half as much as you would think. Then as he's coming into the corner, he's feathering the clutch out gently and progressively so that by the time he gets to the apex, it's just out on the biting point, he can get back on the gas. Sounds simple, doesn't it? Well, Jay may have made it look easy, but I have to say, jumping on a Supermoto bike and trying to do that is no mean feat at all. In fact, you might as well try and leap Niagara Falls in a barrel with your eyes shut. It might be simpler. It's easy enough to get on the bike and get it going and to get the front end right pinned down on the brakes going into a corner. But thinking about getting the back end out, forget about it. It would take months of practice, and even then I reckon you'd have to be pretty tasty. According to Jay, some people get it, some don't. But when he told me just before we went out that the last person he tried to teach to do this had gone to hospital shortly afterwards, I decided I'd play my cards safe today. Well, that's it for us and Supermotos for this part, but join us again in part 2. Welcome back to Two Wheels, where this week we're playing Supermotos. Each week we take 2 bikes, 100 bikers, and from their feedback, we determine a winner. Honda's ST 1300 Pan-European is the larger, revamped and sportier update to the old ST 1100 Pan. It weighs 15 kilos less than the old bike, the wheelbase is 50mm shorter, the mass of the bike is more centralised, add in the new light and stiff aluminium frame, a voila, sportier handling. Yamaha's FJR 1300 is a tad more sports bike orientated, if a tourer can be considered sporty that is. The FJR will have you cruising for miles with ease, comfort and speed. The responsive engine snaps into action and the twin-spar aluminium frame and lightweight swing arm mean it does handle like a peach despite its big and bulky appearance. You've got sports bike-like performance wrapped up in touring clothes, although you've got a little bit less ground clearance if you want to be energetic. It's also got the same brakes as the R1, so if you do get carried away with the throttle, you can soon rein her in again. Both machines are shaft drive with bulletproof engines. Hondas are built to last and the Pan is really no exception. That new Honda motor runs even smoother than the old one, and if you should be silly and drop the bike, the mirrors pop off easily to save too much damage and there are built-in bump rubbers on the sides of the fairing just in case. As for the FJR, the bike itself hasn't been around as long as the Pan, but that motor is as old as the hills, coming as it does from the old FJ11 and 1200, so reliability really shouldn't be an issue. The choice is yours. Play it safe with Honda's tried and tested Pan-European, or be a rogue and try something a little different with the FJR. If the FJR really is a sportier bike than it looks in disguise, you could even surprise a few R1 riders out there. And if that doesn't float your boat but a comfy bum does, then take the Pan. Either way, you won't be disappointed.
The Pan-European and the FJR, I think the FJR is a nicer looking bike, more sporty, but I think I'd go for the Pan because it's got a better reputation, even though it's an old man's bike.
The FJR versus the Pan-European. I'd like to go for the FJR. It's sportier, handles better, but just isn't a good enough tourer. The Pan-European is renowned as being the best. All the add-on extras are brilliant and you could just go for miles.
Well, the Honda's reputation and history has certainly paid off here, taking it to 62% and winning this contest. But the FJR still gets a very comfortable 38, which is mighty impressive given the bike's so new. Anyway, that's done. Now it's over to Fran, who's looking at off-road gear.
So Dave, we've got a good selection of gloves here. Talk me through them.
Okay, Fran, we've got a selection of three. We have the Alpine Star Texstar gloves retailing at $37.95.
Right.
Then we have the Paddock gloves from Axo retailing at $34.99, and the new Fly 208 racing glove retailing at $28.85.
Right. They're not varying much in price again, are they?
No, they're not. No, they're all very, very similar.
Yeah, it's pretty good actually. I mean, you're not going to get ripped off, are you? I'm going to try this one on.
Okay.
You can talk me through it. So what should I be looking for then?
Well, it should act as a second skin. Right, it should be very tight on you. Just
That's
hold
a
my
bit
hand
loose,
there.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little bit loose. It needs to be a little bit tighter. But you'll see you've got knuckle protection, and you've got a little bit of protection here. Really, off-road is completely different to on-road. You're not going to be sliding down the tarmac. What you really want is protection from the stones.
Yeah, and a nice tight fit. So presumably you've got lots of control.
Absolutely.
Great. Yes. So that's the more budget, well, I shan't say budget because they don't vary that much. So XL, I think this might be you. So this is the middle of the road.
This is the middle of the road.
Right, so what's going to be the difference then?
Okay, when we put this one on, you'll see there's a little bit more features.
Nice looking.
It's not bad, is it? Not bad at all. Okay, so you've got increased knuckle protection against the stones, but again, very thin, very lightweight.
Yeah.
To prevent blisters, this part here, and you'll see that we've got some holes here.
Yeah.
This is to let the air in.
Yeah.
On off-road, you're working the bike an awful lot, so you sweat. It's got to be thin, it's got to be absorbent, it's got to be nice and light.
Right.
But a very good glove.
So in complete contrast then to your body, your hands are quite free.
Exactly right.
So these are the Alpine Stars.
These are the top of the range Texstar gloves from Alpine Star.
Okay. Shall I try this one up?
Please do.
They look very snazzy, I must say. Again, that's a little bit too big for me, so I know I'd probably be a small.
Sure.
So this is a bit flash. What's that for?
Again, that's extra protection against all the stones and chips flying up. It's got a lot more protection. Again, it's got a lot more holes, a lot more breathable. you're going to get a lot of feel.
Yeah, and that's
that
nice
glove.
and tight as well. That's
That's
not going
too bad on you,
to
is
come
it?
off, and it's
Yes.
got a bit more padding, that one.
It has indeed.
So that's
nice
obviously
and
the little
thin,
bit extra.
Nice and dexterous. Lots of holes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorted.
Super.
Sold.
That's our hands sorted.
Sold to the lady.
On to boots. Now, your feet are as susceptible to injury as any other part of your body, if not more so. So it's vital you get a good boot and good protection. David, talk us through the boots.
Okay, we have 3 boots here. The Axo RC5 boot, retailing at £199.99.
Right.
We have the City Flex Force, retailing at £220.
Okay.
And the Alpine Star Tech 8, retailing for £259.95.
So not cheap, but again, all in the same kind of
Not
price
cheap,
bracket.
good value, all in the same sort of parish.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Okay,
yes.
so the cheapie.
Okay, cheap at £199.99, the
Yeah.
Axo RC5.
Right.
A very, very heavy, substantial boot.
Good grief. Are they all that
Okay?
heavy?
They are,
Good grief.
because they've got a lot of plastic, they've got a lot of leather, they've got a lot of metal in them, reinforcements.
They don't move.
They don't move. The next one does move.
Right, okay.
Okay, but very, very good boot.
So that's a basic good,
That's a
motocross
top
boot.
quality motorcycle off-road boot.
great.
Okay, City Flex Force, as you would suspect, it moves.
It's hidden in the name, isn't it?
It is. City Flex Force.
Right.
A little bit more movement, still very, very heavy.
Not as heavy though, is
Not
it?
as heavy, no.
So what are all these on
Okay,
here?
that is adjustment so that you can adjust the boot round the calf.
Right.
So it not only fits in the foot, it fits round the calf.
Okay, and a
as
little
well.
bit of that presumably is...
That's like an inner boot.
Yeah,
Okay.
a little bit better than that one,
Yes.
isn't it? Okay, let's put those on there.
Okay, the granddaddy of them all,
Absolutely.
the Alpine Star Tech 8 boot.
It's a bit flash, isn't
It's
it?
not bad at all. Have a feel of that. That's very, very heavy.
I still think that Axo's heavier.
Do you think so?
I think I do.
Okay.
I think so, yeah, but it's
All
a
right.
great looking boot.
It's not bad at all, is it? It's a real professional boot.
Gosh,
They've all got the same sort of quick release mechanisms, fully adjustable. But this one has a removable bootee.
Oh,
Here we go.
which you'll demonstrate.
That's the removable bootee.
Wow. So why is that then? Why is that in
It
there?
extends the life of the boot.
Right.
Okay, so they're a set of boots for for many seasons.
Yeah.
You can also buy replacement heel parts,
Well, that's good then.
heel and sole.
So although it's 260 quid,
It will last you many years.
yeah, and you've
yes.
only got to replace these. You've not
Exactly
got to replace...
right.
Oh, that's really good. That's a great looking boot.
Cracking boot. And again, the difference between on-road and off-road is on-road you want a nice, lightweight, supple boot.
Yeah.
Off-road you're going to be banging into stones,
That's
and
it, I
falling
mean-
off, and you don't want to have any breakages.
Absolutely. No, I mean, an on-road boot, you could actually do a bit of movement.
It's all steel
Keep that leg
reinforcement, yeah.
Great. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you, David, for all that advice.
It's a pleasure.
That's wonderful. Well, as they say, time waits for no man, and it's the same for us women. Unfortunately, our time here at Powersport Bikes in Bradford has drawn to a close. But don't worry, I'll be back next week with all the information you'll need about turning your stock motorcycle into a balmy, brain-bashing monster. Over to you, Wazza.
Having been ritually humiliated on the Supermoto circuit, I'm now off to practice somewhere where people can't see. One thing is for certain, however, it's a darn sight harder than they make it look. In the meantime, we're going to check out what makes the rubber tick with the guys from Avon. Funnily enough, you can't just use any old tyre for a Supermoto race. After all, you need a full-on knobbly set for the off-road sections and a sticky old slick for the tarmac bits. And as changing tyres every half a lap is not a strategy that's ever going to win races, what you really need is a compromise in the shape of a hand-cut slick. Right then, well, I've had a bit of practice, but it's fair to say I think I'm still rubbish. But now it's time to talk tyres, because I'm here with Gavin Johnson and Andy Wheeler from Avon, who are going to explain a bit more. So Gavin, how does a Supermoto tyre differ from a road race tyre or a road tyre?
When we consider the conditions in which a Supermoto tyre is used, you've got a mixture of tarmac and dirt. It's quite demanding on a tyre. In terms of the construction, it's fairly different, therefore, to a road tyre. Also, the shape has been specially designed, allowing the riders to be able to back into the corners as they do.
You mean the actual profile of the tyre, the outside?
Yeah, the actual arc radius has been designed in such a way that they've actually got control mid-slide, as well as also controlling braking when they're getting the power down. the whole range.
Not sort of something you're going to need too much on the road, maybe.
Exactly.
See, Andy here's cutting a slick tyre. Do you have to do a lot of that for Supermoto simply because the tread patterns don't exist that will suit it?
We produced all the tyres as slicks. That gives the riders an option as running with a slick, or they can cut a pattern depending on the weather conditions. Right. Also, as the tracks vary in terms of their ratio tarmac to dirt, they can cut a pattern accordingly.
Yeah. And so this pattern that he's cutting here, is this quite a normal one, or is this the basis of a...
Yeah, this is one of the most popular patterns. They call it a ladder pattern.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Well, you learn something new every day. But not everyone wants to go Supermoto racing. What about if you just fancy dipping a toe in the Supermoto pool to see what it's all about? What are your options then? You could always buy yourself an out-of-the-crate Supermoto, there are a few of them about, but these always tend to be a little bit compromised. If you fancy something truly extreme, you're probably better off building up your own bike. To do this, you will need the basic ingredients of one decent off-road motorcycle and some wider rims that will accept sticky rubber. After this, the world's your oyster, and the only other ingredient you need is a burning desire to ride like a lunatic. Once upon a time, this motorcycle was a Honda XR650, which even in stock trim is a fairly serious piece of single-cylinder off-road kit. But once you've thrown the loud exhaust at it for extra bark and bite, plus the 17-inch rims, plus the Talon hubs, plus the uprated brakes, and the sticky boots to go with it all, it becomes a rabid monster of a road-going Supermoto. Best plan now would be to ride it, I reckon. What an absolutely bananas motorcycle this is. The motor pulls ferociously from nowhere, while the uprated tyres, chassis and brakes mean you can throw it about like a giant Tonka toy. It may not have the precision of the competition Yamahas that are here today, but on the road you're never going to be able to chuck it around like you would on a track, and it is an absolute gas everywhere. But it's not for the faint-hearted. Being a serious bike in the first place means this motor has massive compression. Kick-starting it alone is no mean feat. So there you have it, that's Supermoto. The bikes aren't practical, nor are they comfortable, but they are an awful lot of fun. And as for the racing, it looks spectacular and is nowhere near as easy as the pros make it look. Another thing that said, if you're going to race this, you might be a few sandwiches short of a picnic.